So I did in fact watch Napoleon. And honestly, it's not as bad as a lot of these guys are saying it is. It's not woke. It's not, I don't know, like some atrocious film that's going to go down as to not hold the test of time. I mean, it's not going to be remembered fondly necessarily either. It's just kind of existing, I guess. So we're going to start off with the bad and then go to the good because, you know, we need a happy ending. So that means obviously this isn't necessarily the same as my previous two reviews because it's in theaters and I can't really react to it. So so there'll be some trailer footage and that's about it. So the biggest problem with it is the pacing, in my opinion. So the first 25 minutes or so is about Napoleon's rise to a top general, well-respected general for France. And I think it's fine, but then the next hour or so, 45 minutes, something like that, is Napoleon at the top, becoming the emperor, spending time as emperor, and ultimately the last 45 minutes to an hour is about his downfall. And it just feels like first half's kind of rushed. Like, till he becomes emperor, it feels rushed. Like, it feels like they wanted to get to his failures. It kind of, you know, it feels like pacing-wise, this should have been split into at least 2 movies, realistically 3. If you're trying to cover Napoleon's whole time, his whole life pretty much, as general to emperor to fallen leader, all of that, really it should be either a trilogy or like a series. Anyway, the next bad I'm going to talk about is actually Joaquin Phoenix. And it's not that he's necessarily awful in the role, and he's obviously a good actor. It's that obviously for the first half, it's just kind of jarring to have like a 50-something-year-old man with no de-aging or nothing play like a 20-something-year-old. So like as the movie goes on, it feels like obviously he fits more, but it kind of also makes it all feel like it took place within a few years when really it took place over like nearly 30. So it just kind of, it's something that you think about after the fact. He doesn't really age. He does, but he doesn't. Physically, he doesn't really age. The other real bad one is Josephine kind of being his primary inspiration for everything, which if you know the history of Napoleon, she's obviously important to him, but she doesn't control him the way the movie has it portrayed. Not to mention that it ignores the fact that he had multiple bastard children with multiple different women. He has one and it's just mentioned and then never mentioned again. It just very much feels like it should have been named Napoleon and Josephine, which seems to be what everyone thinks. If this was like a Josephine movie or like split up to be partly a Josephine movie, I feel like people would think of it a little bit better because she has a much bigger role than realistically she should have in a movie about Napoleon. Some other stuff which are a little bit smaller to me. Some other issues I have just off the top of my head and on my little list over here. The scale of like the battles and everything feels so small when most of these battles were kilometers long. Like the battlefield was kilometers long. Obviously they can't do that, but it could, you know, these feel like a couple hundred guys when it's supposed to be tens of thousands in most of these fights. So obviously when you have a budget like they had, I believe it was 200 million or somewhere around that mark, it feels like you could have done a little bit more. It's not like it was a small budget film. I haven't seen it personally, but apparently I've heard Waterloo, the movie, does a much better job in terms of scale. As well as in showing Napoleon's tactics, one of the best tactical generals in the history of the world. And most of his tactics in the movie are just everyone run forward and shoot. Not even have any sort of strategy, not even like run forward, shoot, reload, shoot, hope you don't die. That's a lot of it. There's one scene which I don't think is historically accurate, if I remember correctly. Napoleon reveals like cannons. They're battling on ice, and he uses the cannons to, I guess, cause explosions. Even though the cannons and the cannonballs they just kind of explode instead of bounce or nothing. For the most part, they go through the ice. Everyone just can't swim and they freeze, I guess, and die. That's probably the furthest it gets in terms of brutality and as tactical as it gets. So those are a lot of my big issues with the movie. I mean, I could dive into more detail, but for the sake of your time, I would just say if you're gonna go watch it, it's still in theaters, I believe, for a few more weeks, or if you're watching it way later, just go in knowing like it's fine, but it's not the most accurate depiction of Napoleon. There is some good though, and I wanted to save it till the end. The costume department was amazing. The costumes were great. Whoever did costuming and everything, whoever made it all fantastic, should get a pay raise, honestly. Probably the better sort of events or battles. The Siege of Toulon was probably the best one of the big set piece sort of things. But still, it's probably one of the best battle, like pace-wise and everything, pacing-wise, all that. I want to make sure I say this right here. The Battle of Austerlitz? Listen, I'm a 20-year-old movie reviewer, not very professional. But either way, this is probably the other best battle. Like I said, it's probably not the most historically accurate one, but probably my favorite personally. I think it was fun. I think it was probably the best paced battle. It was fine. It was a fun little setting, foggy, wintry setting. I think it was cool. Obviously, it's a real historic event, but it still helps, all right? Yeah, it's an interesting battle to see. Just some final thoughts here. The pacing's kind of bad. The end's fine. Waterloo's kind of whatever in the movie. I feel like they need a bit more time, but not that I really want this movie to be any longer, but like I said, it should have been a trilogy or a series because of that. Napoleon being spared is just kind of a thing. It's like, well, if we're sparing you, which we've decided to do now, you have to go to this island. It's missing the detail that they kind of probably should have killed him, but they didn't. They respected him enough to send him to the island. I don't know if it specifically mentions that it's because of respect. Probably a good detail to include. But he's sent away, and then, you know, dies on the island. That's the end of it. Josephine's already dead at this point, so he's just kind of a sad old man and dies. It's the ending it's supposed, you know, should have, but it does leave you like going out like, well, we just watched our protagonist die. But it's historically accurate, I guess, in that regard, so fair enough. It just needed more time, and I feel like it needed a better focus. Really, Scott can come yell at me all he wants. You could have cut most of the Josephine stuff, not most, but a good portion of it, and focused more on his actual rise, as well as the battles, the major battles. He's won over I think 60 it was, or over 60. I had to try to do a little bit of research, come on now. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's fine. If you just are looking for something to go watch, there isn't a whole lot of great going on, at least in my theater. We already watched Freddy, so there's not much else really worth watching in there. I guess I'll get working on your next movie review. It's going to be a special holiday themed one because it'll come out right before Christmas. I think you'll enjoy it. I really enjoy so far the work I put into it. So subscribe and I'll catch you for that one. Share the videos. Honestly, check out the FNAF one because I feel like a lot more people would enjoy that, but I don't know if it just didn't get pushed, or maybe I could have done a better thumbnail or a title. But I think it's probably my best one so far, so go check it out. Anyways, see you next time.